Today, we are diving into one of the most exciting and essential topics in JavaScript, asynchronous programming. We will explore promises, async, await, and how they simplify working with asynchronous tasks in JavaScript. But let me first explain you what is asynchronous programming with a simple example. Imagine you are at a restaurant. The waiter takes your order and then goes to the kitchen to prepare your food. And meanwhile, she's ignoring all the other customers. That wouldn't be very efficient, right? JavaScript works similarly. It is a single threaded language, meaning it can only handle one task at a time, like a single waiter. But it has a smart trick to handle multiple tasks efficiently. And that's where asynchronous programming comes in. JavaScript has a single call stack where it executes code one line at a time. If one task takes too long, it blocks the rest of the tasks. And in our restaurant example, the waiter represents the JavaScript engine. If the waiter waits for one customer's food, no other orders get taken. Now imagine the waiter writes down your order and hands it to the chef. There is a chef in the kitchen. The waiter doesn't need to cook your food. While the chef cooks, the waiter moves on to take other customers' orders. Once the chef finishes, the waiter comes back and serves your food. That's how JavaScript uses asynchronous programming to offload time-consuming tasks like fetching data or waiting for user input. While these tasks are being processed in the background, JavaScript continues with other tasks. In the browser, while we are having the JS engine, just like in the picture, next to it now we have all these things, the web APIs and the callback queues, which is the time-consuming events taken care of by that environment, not by the call stack. Since we know now what is asynchronous programming is, let's see the syntax of it and how JavaScript really handles asynchronous programming with a live coding example. Let me share my screen and let's begin. You probably remember this diagram from the introduction lesson. We said because the JS engine has only one call stack, we need web APIs to take care of the time-consuming events like the fetch APIs and the timers. So after the asynchronous task is taken care of by the web APIs, and there are a lot of details to that, the callback function of the current operation is given the callback queue. And we also have an event loop here, which her job is to observe the call stack, see if there is any job is going on. So every box here can be considered as an execution, okay? Execution of function that the call stack needs to take care of in normal flow. So what the call stack is going to do is it will take care of one execution. After that, that execution context is going to be removed from the call stack. And finally, at some point, the call stack is going to be available for a task which is waiting in the callback queue. And the event loop is responsible to observe the call stack. And when it is available, basically, she is taking another callback function into the call stack to be executed. Okay. Now, let's go back to the VS Code. Okay. Now, just write a simple statement, console.log, and that's going to be hello world. And then I use the set timeout function. And again, just simply put another thing here, a console.log statement. Hello again. And another console.log here as a third one. Now, let's see the console. The first execution we got from the line 131, and the other one is 135. Maybe you are considering we got this in that order because you already know what is the set timeout function, which is nothing but taking two arguments, and the first one is the function and the second one is the time. Basically, you are setting the time in milliseconds, and after that much of milliseconds, in our case it is 2000 milliseconds, which is 2 seconds, that function will be executed here. And maybe you thought, well, the hello again coming from the 133 came as a third because of that. But what if I was removing, so let me just clean everything in the console and set the set timeout time function to 0. What about that? Well, again, the code in line 133 executed as the third one. That's because set timeout is an asynchronous operation, is considered as an asynchronous operation by the regular call stack planted into the JS engine. That's why when call stack sees the set timeout function, she's going to handle it. She's going to give it to the web APIs. And the call stack will keep executing. So in that example, that way, she's going to execute, and JavaScript engine reads from top to bottom. That's why she's going to read the 131 first, execute it, and 135 as the second and execute it. They are priority. And later, with the help of the event loop, after the call stack is empty, the event loop is going to give that callback function of the set timeout to the call stack to be executed. That's why even the time is set as a 0, we will see the result of the function, the callback function, as the third in the call stack. That's another example how JavaScript handles the asynchronous tasks. Now that we understand how the event loop works, let's talk about promises. A promise is a way to handle asynchronous operations in JavaScript. It can either resolve successfully or reject with an error. Here is an example where we can simulate ordering food. Create a promise. We use the new keyword and the promise constructor. Promises are a class in JavaScript. And the first argument is going to be a callback function with 2 parameters. Those are, a promise can be either resolved or rejected. Can have 2 states. Okay. We create the promise object. Order food here is our promise object by using the promise class. You will have a better understanding once you of all these things once you studied JavaScript in object-oriented level, if you didn't already. The promises, one of the ways of solving a promise in JavaScript, we take the promise object and then chain it with the then method. Then is going to solve the promise, which means it's going to show if the promise is a success or not. And the error is going to be catch with the catch clause. Let's see what's going on in the console. We got in 147, your order is successful. That's how we handle promises in JavaScript. While promises are great, chaining then and catch can sometimes get messy. Async await simplifies this by allowing us to write asynchronous code that looks like synchronous code. Let me show you how to convert the food ordering example into async await. We are writing an asynchronous function, so we use the async keyword. Function order food async, let's call that. And that is going to console.log. Actually, we can take it into a try and catch block, which is much better for any kind of errors. What I'm gonna do is I will get the await keyword into the try, and we will add the catch for catching the errors and execute the order food async like so. Okay. The promise order food, that's how we solve it by using the async await keywords. Since we cannot use the await in the global environment, we have to put it inside of the async function, just like so. As you can see, the code is much cleaner now. The await keyword pauses the execution of the function until the promise resolves or rejects, making it easier to understand and debug. Since we learn about async await, now let's use it in a real world example. We spoke about in the introduction the fetch keyword, the fetch API. And the fetch API fetch function is used for communicating with another APIs, bring data, basically. Let's do an example by using the fetch API with async await keyword. Let me scroll this up a little bit. Fetch data with async await. We will fetch data from the JSON placeholder API. First, let's do this all the way. And for that, we need to create an async function, of course. async function because we cannot use the await keyword in the global, not yet. Just create the function first. Okay. Again, I'm going to use a try and catch block. I will make the API call inside of the try at the post, but let's bring some users. So that's going to be the slash users. And response.json and console.log looks okay. For you who never introduced herself to the fetch API yet, what fetch does is it speaks with an API and by default it makes a get request, which means it will bring some data basically. In order to do so, we need to give the URL of the server as a parameter passed to the fetch function as a parameter. And since that call is going to return a response, we need the await keyword in front of it. So JavaScript knows that that call is going to take some time and it's not going to pass to the line 169 before getting a response. And the response is going to be a promise type, okay? And it is going to come into the JSON format, which means we need to now convert it into a JavaScript object, which will take time again. And that's why we are using the await keyword. So we are being sure that the data won't be console.log before we have an answer, before we have the data. Now it's time to add the catch block for the errors, like so, and execute the fetch data. As you see, the data is here as an array of objects, We successfully fetched and displayed the user data. Async await made it simple to write and read the code. Let's take it one step further and display just the names and the email addresses. How to do that? Well, we just need to manipulate the data here. And well, since data is coming as an array of objects, and if we want to display only the email, let's go back. Email and the names, whatever data we decided to, we need to read every object, right? And you already know from the JavaScript Fundamentals lecture number 2, arrays are data structures, which is basically used to store the same data in one place in the memory. So all I have to do is to for loop to that array and then display from the objects the specified decided labels, decided data parts, right? There is a high order array methods subjects. This is the subject of another lesson. And what I can do is I can take the data here. Let's do it here. And apply the for each, just like so. For each is a high order array method, which is receiving a callback function as a parameter, a function as a parameter. And it automatically for loop through the array and passes, since we have the user object inside of the arrays here, I'm going to call the parameter of the function of the for each as a user, and it passes the data of the user as a parameter to the function, like so. So now if I just go by the username, all I have to do is console.log the username, as you can see here. And if we want to both to use the username and email side by side, then I can use string interpolation like so, right? $, and the data and the backticks around of it. This is how you can use Async await to fetch and display data dynamically in your projects. It's powerful and makes working with APIs much easier. To wrap up, we explored the JavaScript event loop, promises, and async await. These concepts are the foundation of working with asynchronous programming in JavaScript. I hope this video helped clarify how these tools work together. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or suggestions for future topics. See you in the next video. Bye for now.